This video is made possible by the Boost Fund, a program of Assembly for the Arts.
Is taking legal action against her ex, DDG. The Little Mermaid star, who shares 17-month-old son Halo with the rapper, was granted a temporary domestic violence restraining order on May 13th against the musician.
Chris Brown arrested. The 36-year-old Grammy winner reportedly taken to jail in England for an alleged attack at a nightclub there 2 years ago.
Meanwhile, musician Tory Lanez, convicted of shooting rapper Megan Thee Stallion, sentenced to 10 years in prison. A judge in Los Angeles handing down that sentence today, culminating a case that filled gossip pages and polarized the music industry.
My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it, I'm disgusted now.
Wherever you want. You can sit right here. Yeah.
Okay, so masculinity seems to be in crisis, and men are under attack for just being bros. While we live in an era where femmes continue to dominate the charts, and every other week there seems to be another famous or successful man that seems to find himself on the other side of the law in a way that seems explicitly unfair, almost like they're intentionally targeted. Well, that's what the streamer spirit want you to think. As a person in the middle of all this discourse, I'd like to just go over the concerns raised and find out exactly what the hell is going on. But first, what's good? Hi, hello, how are you? I am Square Symbols, a musician and yapper who likes to explore the intersections between music, entertainment, and culture. If you're resonating or enjoying the vid, leave a like, comment, and maybe share the video with someone who you think might enjoy it. And if you want to support my work, consider becoming a member of my Patreon. I post behind the scenes stuff. You also get exclusive videos and live performance footage, early access to vids like this, and a few other things that I detail there specifically. You can hit the join button to do memberships on YouTube, or hit the Patreon link that's in the description. And with that, let's get back to the video. The shape of social development is changing. It has been changing for a while now. But with the lack of functioning infrastructure, little to no funding for after-school programs, as well as the disappearance of community centers or other third spaces, growing into and finding your community seems to be funneled into the online social media and streamer space, especially for adolescents and teens, leaving it to short-form content platforms like a TikTok to inform and entertain young folks looking to develop short-form communication cultures while they craft interest and identities. From there, we have streamers on YouTube and Twitch picking up the slack of creating parasocial but occasionally beneficial community spaces. For the old heads, these streamers can respond to a live chat, and the audience of dedicated chatters and lurkers alike get to spend their time watching their favorite personalities play video games, discuss their thoughts on love, life, and politics, or whatever the hell this is.
Around this time, I'm 22. You know what I mean? And it took me a while to understand that, and you know it did. And I just want to say, bro, I think I'm ready, bro.
This has greatly changed and reshaped the entertainment landscape. On one hand, democratizing the entertainment and content creation space in a way in which everyone is able to make something, live stream, show off how good they are at what video game is trending that season, or do outlandish BS on camera to a growing audience. On the other hand, it puts large audiences in the hands of some real creeps.
There's not another 15-year-old that you could bust down? Yo, bro. Yo, like, I'm serious. So there's not another 15-year-old you could bust down?
Dude, would you let him fuck you?
No.
Why not? Suppose he's like, yo, bro, listen, yo, you always wanted me to be next to you. Now I could be inside of you. Pause.
Yo, I'm not gay.
Nah,
you was sucking dick, though.
Yeah.
Some perpetual losers, some all-around goofies, men who hate women, who spout racist nonsense, peddle misinformation, and use rats as alarm clocks.
The thing is, I used to use a dead rat as an alarm clock, actually, for my stream, because basically what happened was whenever the sun would come up, it would start cooking the corpse of the rat and then it would start smelling again, and then the smell would wake me up. So I would use the rat effectively as an alarm clock, and as soon as it, you know, it got hot enough, it would wake me up, and then I would know, oh it's time to stream.
And with this being one of the most accessible spaces for young men, I mean, all you need to do is have a phone or a computer. These spaces become the places where young men construct their concepts of masculinity. And that can be a problem, but we'll get into that later. With the ever-changing online landscape, the content creators got hip real quick, with a few pivoting from creating YouTube content to streaming, with that format being more conducive to the type of stuff that they create. And this is where our story starts. Enter DDG.
She cheated on me.
What?
On a break. She did something.
That's cheating. I'm not gonna.
But it was just the dude it was with that f***ed me up, right? I never got over it. We got back together, and then I just started cheating on her because I couldn't get over it. I listened to this nigga music, and I heard her listening to this girl's song. So I started messing with the girl's song she was listening to.
He said, let me do it back to you.
Now you're evil.
For the adults with lives and whatnot, DDG is a late 2010s era YouTuber specializing in what we would call harassment content. Vids that center bothering women while not being a total nuisance, I think. More or less, I hope. While it's not my thing, I can admit that his lack of a loud and upfront personality can be a little charming. DDG, being sort of a pioneer of this high view yield content, put him in a position of admiration amongst young male audiences. He funneled his attention into a moderately successful rap career, kinda. Like, his stuff never entered my sphere specifically, but I can admit, actually having a song where Blueface raps on beat is impressive. From there, he's been streaming on Twitch, I believe, and collaborating with other streamers and rappers, doing IRL or real life streaming content, or reacting or chatting about whatever. Because his pocket of the internet is indeed still very niche, albeit profitable, he managed to fail upward, dating and then having a baby with Halle Bailey. I know a lot of men are gonna have a problem with me saying that. In honesty, his career is indeed dwarfed by Halle's. Yeah, he's done well, amassed a successful online presence, but compared to being handpicked by Beyonce and having a discography/filmography deeper than 99% of his peers, you can see that this definitely puts her in a different category altogether, if we're being honest. Side note, I'm not really sure what it is about very talented black femmes having partners who always find a way to out themselves, incredibly corny and insecure individuals. Reminds me of Keke Palmer's boyfriend having a public meltdown on Twitter after she had the nerve of looking good at an Usher concert a few years ago. Now that I think about it, Usher was loosely involved in both of these situations.
Tell my chat that when you gave the cherry to Halle that you wasn't really like trying to really give it to her. It was just like a part of the show.
Yeah, well, that's true. It was just for the show. So nothing more than that.
So you like, you wasn't doing it like to disrespect me or nothing. I know me and you like cool. Your girl is my A&R. You know, we known each other for a few years. I wouldn't say we like best friends, but we definitely like, you know, if you see me out, I see you out. It's all love, and you know, we always gonna speak.
Yeah, we always gonna speak, and it's all love.
So like when you give the cherries at your show, like what do you do that for?
It's just a part of the show, really. It's just to get the audience more involved and get the energy going.
So it's not like I'm just trying to figure it out because, you know, I'm live right now and I don't want my chat, we call them chat, I don't want them to like think that I got hold or nothing or like anything crazy going on with my situation. So I just wanted to just clarify with you for real.
Yay, it's nothing to think about in that situation. It's all part of just the show, you feel me?
But more to the point of this video, a few weeks ago, Halle was granted a restraining order against DDG, citing allegations of abuse, both physical and emotional, from DDG, or his government name, Daryl. And according to the order, Daryl is still allowed to have supervised visits with his son, with some caveats. And prior to these allegations, even though that they were, I think, split up towards the end of 2024, it seemed that they were working towards being dedicated to being cooperative co-parents. So with that info, it would seem like the most sensible thing for Daryl to do is to first take some time off the internet to reflect and reprocess this offline and do as much as possible to not make a spectacle of the situation to salvage control of the narrative surrounding his family. But instead we get,
where's Halo at?
What do you mean? He's sleeping, he's in bed, RN.
Give me my fucking son back.
What? Why are you acting like this? What have I ever done for you to act like I'm some sort of monster that would keep your son from you?
Because you don't know how to respect me and you disrespect me in public over a fucking Usher concert. Where is my son at? I'm taking my son.
I do respect you more than I have anybody, but I am so very tired of you being this insecure and controlling. I did not disrespect you or embarrass you. You are embarrassing yourself, and don't you touch my son. He is staying right where he is. You go ahead and leave. I'll even help you pack a suitcase, but you are not taking Halo. You don't get to threaten to take my son from me.
All you gotta do is block Usher and then I'll stop.
That's it? Seriously? Just block him on Instagram and this will all go away and we can be perfectly happy again?
Yes.
Look, whether you believe the allegations or not, if we're being honest, this doesn't seem like the actions of someone who is acting within the best interest of their child in the first place. In fact, it's looking like a very childish and desperate attempt to victimize oneself, lipping off of the wounds of having one's public embarrassment and their dirty laundry coming to light, and in an attempt to save face, play into the Manosphere's inherent hatred of women to garner sympathy and support. But let me not get ahead of myself. To be honest, the more info that comes out about this specific case and story, the worse he looks. Recently memeing in response to folks calling him doo-doo garbage, releasing a text message exchange in which Halle, who's dealing with postpartum depression, is pleading for support while he's cheating on her in Mexico, and chalking her pleas for help as irrational behavior. Now, this isn't TMZ. I don't really feel comfortable covering what many would call celebrity drama here, but I truly think this situation highlights the huge gap in compassion and humanity that fuels gendered atomization, or what folks are calling the male loneliness epidemic. A bunch of crusty dudes not really knowing about basic things like postpartum depression, what pregnant or new parents need in terms of partner support, and basically what they expect from women in the first place. Kind of highlights how little people know about childbirth or how life-altering childbirth really is. Especially since I see both men and women attempting to paint both sides as toxic, when in reality, postpartum depression is incredibly common, with 1 in 8 birthing persons experiencing it. And statistically, Black women have had a higher rate of experiencing postpartum depression specifically. And on that note, a lot of folks, especially young men, have zero idea of how taxing childbirth actually is. It really changes your body, like forever. And regardless of how much money you might have, it's always dangerous. Not saying that to be alarmist or anything, but to put into perspective how impactful the pregnancy and childbirthing process actually is, because public health and education has failed most of us.
Neglistically speaking, how is this a reasonable reaction from a man after learning he may not see his son? I'm not sad. Shazam! Now you can leave, go about your day. I don't lose. That's Daryl being absolutely normal.
One can say that not taking care of your baby or your pregnant girlfriend or partner isn't very manly. I'm just saying. Regardless, he's still receiving widespread support from the male streamer space, recently partaking in Streamer University, while folks in the academics Twitter space work overtime to rework the narrative and paint Halle as the abusive party. So what's the disconnect? Why is one man who's like big in a very specific part of the internet valorized, believed, and to an extent venerated for his poor behavior? Well, we can see how this intersects with another high-profile case, so let's briefly talk about Tory Lanez, I guess.
When you look at the evidence, a shooting or a gun in the call, the prosecutor even said in his closing argument that he'd gone over it a few times with his co-counsel, and they just can't figure out what else he could be talking about in this call. And they went through it line by line, focused on how he's asking about how Meg's in the hospital. This is his apology call to Kelsey. And we never really seemed to hear much about that from the defense in trial. Like, they really needed to explain what that call was.
Tory is a rapper, singer, and Canadian. Like, I don't know, his stuff wasn't that great to me. Some of it was solid, a lot of it was forgettable, but for a few, at the time, he managed to satisfy a certain commercial aesthetic and made some music that resonated with a selection of folks. In my circle, he was always that artist that you heard their name, but you didn't really know any of their songs. 2016 to 2018 was a strange time, I would say. But I would say by and large, Tory is mostly known for shooting hip-hop megastars Megan Thee Stallion in the foot after attending a party with her back in 2020. A crime he was convicted of on August 8th, 2023, I believe. It's important to point out, and a very easy and Googleable fact, that the Los Angeles DA filed charges against Tory. So his battle is against the state, not Megan specifically. Despite this being the reality, much of the blame, hatred, and harassment is going to Megan directly. And again, this isn't a T channel, but this very strange harassment has permeated or absorbed into almost every corner of the male entertainment space. Weird gamers, hip-hop listeners with bad taste, pick-me's, maggots, and obviously Drake, who's somehow most of those things.
Whipped and changed you like American slave.
Except for the last one, I think. And apparently, prison hasn't been kind to Tory, with him being Swiss cheesed a few weeks ago. Artists like Drake and a few others have called for him to be pardoned based solely on him being a little guy having a hard time in prison. They say there's new evidence, but if that's the case, tell that to the courts. Argue with the state. There are legal processes to follow with these things that can make that possible. The performative martyrdom of Tory doesn't really exist to shine a light on how the criminal justice system disproportionately targets black men to make them modern day slaves in the prison industrial complex, or a conspiracy helmed by Roc Nation to suppress black men outside of the Jay-Z power network. All this does is publicly valorize a man who's committed a violent crime. And how do I know this? The defense's story continues to change. This stuff is all public information. There's an established timeline, consistent record of events, but somehow Tory's team can just say something, whatever they want, and that could be the new narrative. And it's actually Megan who's evil and inconsistent and manipulating the narrative, prompting audiences, once again, to target her, berate her, and regurgitate the same controversies over and over again. All to the point of, again, severely affecting Megan's mental health, where it has become the theme of some of her recent releases. And again, we have a black woman enduring violence, and instead of any compassion, she becomes the target, the villain, while a Tory or a DDG remain the victim, with them being asked to be accountable or face supposed social annihilation. But if we're being for real, this consistent violence against women seems to be the cultural capital needed to achieve relevance or clout in a media landscape built only on the basis of attention, clicks, likes, and views. And I know that might seem like an extreme statement, that violence against women, specifically black women, is cultural capital to men in these spaces, but just hold on for a bit. And if I'm so wrong about this, then why is Chris Brown still extremely popular?
Things or decisions that I made, I wouldn't have thought that would have been in my character.
Investigators tell ET an arrest happened just after 2 a.m. on Thursday outside this 5-star hotel in Manchester.
I went to high school in the late 2000s, so I very much remember the quick rise of Chris Brown. Homie had everything. He could sing a little bit, he could dance, he was light-skinned, he was tall. It was kind of weird, mainly because of the facts I just mentioned, that folks started comparing him to Michael Jackson, or Miguel Jackson. I can admit, he's pretty talented. The vocals were a little bit shaky at first, but I found him kind of entertaining. He did this and Stomp the Yard, or was it You Got Served? I don't remember. That was cool.
Get off there! Come on!
From here, we all know what happened. A high-profile relationship with Rihanna showcased his darker, more violent side with a very public and well-documented account of intimate partner violence. Again, not a T channel. The pictures exist, it's disgusting, and while for a little bit he was kind of kept out of certain spaces for his atrocious behavior, homie stayed the course and maintained to never go away. And let's be clear, his violence against Rihanna wasn't an isolated incident, a lapsed moment of judgment, a mistake made in the excesses and stresses of youth. Homie has a very well-documented history of violence, not only against women, but folks working for him, or his prolonged and arduous record of abuse with his other ex, Karrueche Tran. Personally became aware of his abusive actions through a very weird and aggressive homophobic beef that he had with singer Frank Ocean.
Forgot you don't like it rough. I mean, he called me a faggot.
And why's his mug all bloody? That was a 3-on-1.
This apparently culminated with an altercation in which Chris and 2 or 3 of his entourage members jumped Frank in an ocean. Jumped Frank in an ocean is fucking hilarious. That's fucked up. All right. Jumped Frank Ocean in a parking lot outside of a recording studio back in 2013. This coming 2 years after a heated Twitter argument back and forth, which kind of started because Frank compared Chris to an abusive singer-songwriter, most notably Ike Turner.
Was mainly a writer, which is actually a huge insult to Frank if you know anything about how he got his career started. Frank Ocean was trapped as a writer for his record label for a very long time. And if you know anything about the music industry, what record labels like to do is they like to trap people as writers for their bigger artists.
But on some real shit, footage of this altercation does exist. And as a person who lived through this, based on CB's weird anger issues at the time, it's not hard to believe that Chris Brown did indeed use both homophobic slurs against Frank and jumped him in said parking lot. And it definitely doesn't end there. We have a felony assault case in fall 2013, followed by him being kicked out of a rehab facility for more violent behavior. His 2016 case where an ex-manager also accused him of brutally attacking him years prior. The arrest regarding a standoff with the police the same year. A sexual assault case in 2018. A similar violent case which caused him to be detained in Paris the following year. And a bunch of other shit, including a recent public altercation with singer Usher, which again is rumored to have happened because he was in the process of striking another woman. By all accounts, man sounds like a monster. This hasn't stopped him from constantly releasing extremely long ass albums that I cannot fathom listening to. He still gets major opportunities and chances for a continuous redemption arc, even though his behavior has continually been that of a non-remorseful and violent person for nearly a decade and a half at this point. Folks who are looking for a career boost or stream boost continue to work with him. Both men and women seem to not have a problem collaborating with him for some reason, even though he has a very public and exhaustive history of violence and is a high-profile abuser. And because of this, he's incredibly successful. He's one of the most commercially successful R&B artists of all time. But a better question is, what does his success and behavior signal to young men regarding their violent actions? Is his talent and art more important than how he treats people? This is all information that is public and easily accessible. Why don't many folks my age seem to care?
Eccentric, and I'm a Scorpio.
What's one misconception about you?
There are no misconceptions about me.
What's your biggest strength?
My belief in God.
What's your biggest weakness?
Fried chicken.
I honestly didn't think we'd get here so fast, but here we go. Despite the world seeing actual footage of Cassie enduring a brutal assault in a hotel hallway, we have a collection of think pieces painting the victim, Cassie Ventura, as a willing participant who, at best, could have just left anytime she wanted. Because, abuse has no psychological or material effect that might keep you from leaving. I've had actual women say that stuff to my face. And there's a litany or collection of dudes on Twitter or in the streamer spaces who have said the same thing. This weak and feeble understanding of power dynamics and pick-me-isms has more to do with how American individualism naturally plays into a capitulation to power and control, and I might say empire.
Fucking hardest hustler in the world. This is Savage Part 2. Don't tell me about it. It's 2022 and I'm still a savage. Whatever I want, I get. Whatever I want, I fucking get.
It's colonizer shit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What's almost as weird is that we have men lashing out at other public figures for testifying in regards to the crimes that they're the victims of. Kid Cudi, who had the nerve of attempting to date Cassie, was threatened and his car was blown up for doing so. Like, this is truly weird cartoon Joker shit.
You really thought that? But I love you, and we're together. We're stronger together. You lucky nigga. Come to the after party and change your vibration.
With men claiming that testifying in court in regards to crimes one is a victim of makes said person a rat, or goes against some unspoken hip-hop rules, which just sounds silly when you examine the full context of the situation. Diddy is accused not only of the beating and essay of Cassie, he's literally on trial for racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution, in addition to putting the lives of so many others in danger, and the whole sexual assault thing. Folks are having fun by minimizing this, saying that he's only a super freak, or more invested in the fact that he has slept with men. Ha! Gay! With again the spectacle of the situation taking center stage in this discourse, are we literally stating that a man who's accused of woman beating, SA, and human trafficking needs to be protected by the hip-hop community in order to comply with the rules of hip-hop? Or put plainly, does the not snitching policy apply to the men who are brutal to our sisters, our femme friends, our mothers, our grandmothers? The obvious answer to this, sadly, is yes. We often have conversations about systemic structures, and from my vantage point, niggas have no problem understanding that there are systemic factors that limit their personal freedoms, regardless of education or background, for the most part. But as soon as we attempt to have a conversation about how these men contribute to these systems that harm women and femmes, the boys want to turn their ears off or distance themselves from the problem in a way that preserves their innocence personally, or lack of culpability. Just keeping it a buck, they want to say the right thing, but do nothing. I was gonna write have your cake and eat it too, but that statement never really made sense to me, because who wants to acquire cake and then not eat it? That makes no sense at all. Part of this issue can come down to our growing social understanding of oppression and the structures that make all of our lives difficult, and the difficult reckoning with one's place in society. Holding it in your brain that you, as a black masked person, are the target of state violence and society is literally designed for you to fail can be an earth-shattering realization. Understanding how you, despite the previous realization, participate in a socialized culture of oppression towards people lower on the totem pole can be difficult as well, because you have to construct an identity outside of what you're told you're supposed to be, and then make space for those people within that identity construction. But with that said, can you imagine what it's like to be on the other side of that? If we have data, studies, and tons of similar lived experiences in regards to the struggle of black women and femmes, why are men so invested in cutting down women at every turn? Well, let's go back to Diddy. Okay, so from my vantage point, I never liked him at all, or trusted him. I'm gonna just say that right off the bat. I remember really liking Biggie when I was a small child, and to see that there was a tepid energy nigga who rapped next to him sometimes and had to be in every video kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
They want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
Diddy has consistently had weird, controller, horny guy energy. Biggie died when I was 6. I remember that because my mom was basically disabled when she was raising us during the early years, and all we could do was watch music videos together. Experiencing hip-hop culture during that time was very strange, because as I grew older, Diddy made more and then less music. But a lot of it stemmed from his cultural relevancy and positionality to one of the most iconic rappers of all time, and his legacy specifically. Also, truth be told, his early production style also sucked ass. He just snatched the instrumental from a song beloved in the black community and just rap over them most of the time. Like, this was a well-known secret in hip-hop circles and was referenced by other producers and label owners and MCs at the time.
They jacked the beats, money came with ease, but Sonny couldn't stop us like he had a disease. He jacked another and another.
But obviously, like, you can watch FD video about this, Diddy put himself in constant positions where he allowed himself to saturate the media landscape and expand his empire, growing from prestige producer to reality TV star to brand business mogul, all of this being the right way to do black capitalism, able to shape the music and cultural landscape in his image. More than likely through a collective tactic of grooming younger artists, possibly blackmailing niggas and intimidating them on some supervillain type. And yet, despite the massive amounts of harm he's done to others and careers he's destroyed, there's a pretty small subsection of men who feel like because he himself is a powerful, wealthy man, he should be shielded from the consequences of his actions. Which, in this broad and vague dismissal of reality, what we have here is a conflation of wealth, power, and morality. We can briefly discuss how these connections tend to be drilled in us early on through Disney movies or other Western media. But in this such case, there's an aggrieved entitlement over what's owed to black folks, as descendants of enslaved people who were cheated out of a promise. a pact, an agreement of equal citizenship.
40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music.
So when those who succeeded within the system are reined in, maybe it's for bad behavior, or maybe the gatekeepers, the white ruling class, is attempting to stifle the industrious black man for taking what's owed to him. Forget all the other people this person might have harmed. His greatness, his ability to acquire wealth under the specific marginalized identity is enough to warrant community protection, because they specifically are the ones who move the culture forward. And those who experience harm at the hands of these people are just ritualistic sacrifices for the man's greatness. Great man theory refers to a philosophical concept that suggests history is primarily shaped by the actions of remarkable individuals, rather than collective societal movements. Popularized by Scottish writer Thomas Carlyle in his 1840s work On Heroes, Hero Worship, and Their Heroic History, the theory posits that certain individuals possess innate qualities that enable them to rise above their contemporaries and achieve greatness. Carlyle viewed these great men, including figures like kings, poets, and politicians, as natural leaders who inspire and uplift those around them through their actions and virtues. Though as a framework or a way of thinking, it's incredibly inaccurate. It is how we are told to understand history. It is why we are taught that Martin Luther King Jr. used nonviolence to defeat racism, and not that he was a socialist who worked with a broad coalition of folks to organize change on a national scale and was murdered for opposing the Vietnam War and capitalism. This whitewashed legacy can then be weaponized against the current collective that wants to see change happen, but that's a different video. Great man theory within these conversations is so applicable because through a Diddy or a Chris Brown to an extent, we as black consumers are able to look at their success, how they present their lifestyles as a beacon of hope, a sign that shows that the system can work if we play the game the right way. Capitalism isn't bad, you just have to do it right. Or the other side of that, in which their talent should exonerate them from their consequences. They make so many people happy. So what if a few eggs got cracked along the way? But let me chill. By and large, folks don't really think Diddy or Chris Brown are Nelson Mandela anyway. They're more concerned with the systemic hypocrisy of the criticism of their actions specifically. White entertainers are allowed to get away with stuff like this and be beloved by the music scene or the entertainment industry all the time. And to an extent, I can understand that. While his image in the peak or post-Beatle years centered a peaceful and calm ethos that centered equality and peace and love and all that, John Lennon also beat his first wife and had a not-so-secret reputation of having violent outbursts, according to people who worked for him. One can mention Roman Polanski, Brad Pitt, Woody Allen, Marilyn Manson, Anthony Kiedis, and more recently, Jared Leto, who's been a weirdo for a minute, but that hasn't stopped him from morbing his way onto stages to perform some of the most insufferable music of all time. So the criticisms of these harmful, powerful men is more concerned with them, by being successful and talented, being able to replicate white structures of violence. Be it the common domestic violence that so many famous musicians are known for, or exploiting those under you via predatory contracts so that they can build wealth and a legacy. It's an appeasement to the capitalist status quo, but with an oppressor that looks like us, and one that can dance or write fun songs. So when looking to boycott these artists or, pack them out, are annoying killjoys who just need to separate the art from the artist. Their music being good or their fame makes them important. Sadly, kind of our love and appreciation for folks in the arts is the emotional default, but it plays into something a little bit more heinous and begins with the P. According to bell hooks,
patriarchy is a political social system that insists that males are inherently dominating, superior to everything and everyone deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak and to maintain that dominance through various forms of psychological terrorism and violence.
I know. It's a broad assumption to state that these men are looking to replicate white structural violence, but we'll get there. Just hold on for a second.
Sometimes people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they are presented with evidence that works against that belief, the new evidence cannot be accepted. It would create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable, called cognitive dissonance. And because it is so important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with the core belief.
I believe violence in its many forms play a huge role in how power operates and limits us within our daily lives. So much of how we demonstrate value, discuss who's worthy and who isn't, relies on our capitalistic value as a human, either as a worker or the one who's gamed the system in a way where we're able to exploit others. And I think when we're discussing a DDG, Tory Lanez, Chris Brown, or Diddy, their value is reified or reinforced by them having a lot of money, which in turn reinforces their masculinity. And when they have difficulties or when that fails,
if you cannot prove that you are much of a man by becoming president or becoming rich or becoming a public leader or becoming a boss, then violence is your ticket into the patriarchal manhood contest, and your ability to do violence levels the playing field. On that field, the field of violence, any man can win.
Hence the violent outburst or their need to express themselves in that way consistently. But what does this have to do with whiteness or white supremacy as a concept? Well, let's iron out a few things first.
Dominator culture teaches all of us that the core of our identity is defined by the will to dominate and control others. We are taught that this will to dominate is more biologically hardwired in males than in females. In actuality, dominator culture teaches us that we are all natural-born killers, but that males are more able to realize the predator role. In the dominator model, the pursuit of external power, the ability to manipulate and control others, is what matters most. When culture is based on a dominator model, not only will it be violent, but it will frame all relationships as power struggles. Put very simply, Hooks is saying that our global value system is based on violence and not inherent value. Biologically, men are presumed to be stronger than women, so we as a society give men more value, establishing patriarchy. The richer you are, the more able you are to assert all forms of violence against the less rich, establishing classism. The social constructions of race mean that the darker you are, the more likely you are to be subject to violence, establishing racism. Dominator culture can never achieve community. It is a culture better suited for destruction.
With the rise of this manosphere nonsense and the initial intellectualization of traditional gender roles and hierarchy by a collection of pundits that I won't name here, the discourse pool kind of regressed, based on information rooted in pseudoscience. So let's just say that there have been cultures throughout history that have done things a little bit differently, either matriarchal societies or societies that valued partnership and mutuality as a core tenet of organizing society. But through socioeconomic constructs like race and then gender, the very ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman were created by the colonial class, who imposed it upon us while gatekeeping us from accessing it, as well as engaging with a fully realized humanity, hence the initial difficulties of constructing an identity. But we can dig a little bit deeper.
So they're just for embellishment at this point.
Yeah, totally redundant, just for show.
Completely.
And the fabric itself is lovely as well.
It is. That is all silk.
I know. It might not seem that deep, but let's seriously interrogate how masculinity functions and operates, and how being a man is expressed, because these things aren't necessarily static, meaning that they don't stay the same and they never have stayed the same throughout history. What it's meant to be a man, to dress like a man, to present as a man, behave as a man, has always changed. And it does mean different things to different cultures, from culture to culture. But we're focusing on masculinity in the West here, so we can lock in on how it's expressed here. Within the European masculine fashion or consortium or framework, it was masculine to wear dresses and high heels at a certain point. They were also into peeing and shitting in the corners of their homes. Hence those diseases from hundreds of years ago or whatever. Nah, but I need to talk about this for a little bit. Europeans stank so much that African royals who traded with them could smell them from miles away, especially when they approached. Like seriously, some things never change. My bad. Let me shout out to my European homies who be washing their asses. I love y'all. But post this era, what we know and called race was constructed by colonizers, namely the Spaniards and the Portuguese. This then spread throughout their colonial collaborators and competitors in France, Britain, and the Dutch. Can't forget the Dutch. Anyway, all this to say, this is where our general construct of what race is comes from. I'll put a video that gives more information about this. But yeah, race, socially constructed. It also changed a lot of the social frameworks we enforce today. A quick example of this is how being fat back in the day used to be a sign of wealth and affluence. But this changed when the enslavers examined and attempted to categorize African bodies, noticing that the femmes were a little bit thicker. So in order to reify white womanhood, being skinny or thinness became aligned with whiteness for an immediate contrast. And to expound on this, black people weren't seen as human, to justify the whole slavery thing. So the Western idea of manhood were socially constructed to contrast with what the enslaved did. Masculinity involved power, control, and ownership. Collecting capital under capitalism meant that being in servitude made you less of a man. From there, you know what happened. We have an uphill battle of human rights, very small gains being won, and continual legislative rollbacks from a state where white vigilante violence and state violence against black people in this country basically go hand in hand. From there, you can say that black folks are living in what I would call specifically an occupied position here in this country, under colonial rule, so to speak, like many other black and brown people within the diaspora. All affected differently, mind you, but similar conditions of colonization. Now I know, this doesn't seem to have very much to do with directly what Diddy did or Tory Lanez, but I find the timeline of Diddy's rise very closely connected to a colonial mindset. The initial Biggie era high-key changed the optics of hip-hop culture. Not only did it embrace the American immigrant dream aesthetic, the idea that one can come from nothing but grind as hard as they possibly can and then make something of themselves, but now able to live a life of excess and have the ability to acquire high-quality clothes, drinks, jewelry. Here we have the obsession with foreign designer brands as a clear class signifier and a reification of power, and more to my point, masculinity. And don't get me wrong, it's still great music, but with the white rock star tradition, masculinity became less about being tied to your culture, your family, taking care of, protecting them, but having access to fancy white brands and access to rooms which are usually reserved for wealthy white people. Enter the era of extravagance, better known as the bling era, which refers to a grand display of opulence. The hip-hop landscape shifted towards an era of extravagance, also known as the bling era, from 1997 to 2006. The bling era signified an ostentatious return to the genre's old school roots, but with a twist of luxury and materialism. This was a time when hip-hop went from being a pulsating undercurrent in the music industry to holding the reins of mainstream culture. The era was characterized by its flamboyant lyrical content, where storytelling was often embellished with tales of extravagant lifestyles, overflowing wealth, and high fashion. The beats, once a complement to the lyrical prowess of an artist, came to the forefront, often becoming the driving force of a song. Rhymes that were once focused on a socio-political commentary and the lived reality of urban life were now laced with grandiose displays of material success and the pursuit of opulence. A lot of this loosely piggybacked off of the socio-economic connections many rappers of the era had towards mafia movies, which makes sense. These stories usually involved Shakespearean tales of the underdog, usually an Italian or South American immigrant, using the tools at their disposal to make it in America, with them eventually making it to the top by less than legitimate means, i.e. organized crime, making them still outsiders to a certain extent, but also able to flaunt their new riches. What the bling era usually leaves out is that these movies generally didn't end well. They're usually tragedies that involve betrayal or deep loss. What we have from this cross-cultural experience is a sustained power fantasy where, through the hip-hop reality, these men who came from nothing can now be the criminal bosses who call all the shots. And I guess when we're discussing the alleged crimes of Diddy, for example, fiction becomes reality. In Black Skin, White Mask, Frantz Fanon discusses the psychological toll colonization has on one's psyche, obviously, especially in regards to the construction of identity. Language, dress, and possession of women in order to distance themselves from what they would call a lesser existence is paramount to establishing manhood, because they can only exist as a man by the colonizer's standards, which explains so many other issues. Internalized anti-blackness.
Mad at him. I just said I don't like women with my complexion. I like light-skinned women. I want you to be lighter than me. I love African-American women, but I just don't like my skin complexion.
Possession of white women as a status symbol, or as I mentioned earlier, a right to abuse women, especially if they're black women. As a broader cultural issue, black and brown bodies within the capitalist system are tools to be used for capital, be it social currency or trophies to help a man self-actualize. They must tolerate all of the man's bullshit because remember, within the capitalist, patriarchal, white supremacist framework, women are not supposed to have rights either. This includes white women. And of course, this leads us to the logical conclusion of accepting this type of worldview.
So, it's like magnetic. So one goes in here.
Yeah, not much to say about this, other than we could have seen the sign sooner.
Eating Asian pussy, all I need was sweet and sour sauce.
Shout out to Manosphere. She has a really good video about this. But homie has been gooned out for a minute.
Black girl sipping white wine, put my fist in her like a civil rights sign.
But beyond his very revealing and high-key embarrassing public fetish and sex-obsessed lyrics, a core part of the "you don't got the answer" sway decline of his purely mental and social breakdowns are him fully embracing a white capitalist wealth infrastructure. He wants to be in conversations with the white men who are titans of industry.
Beat the money shit. I already beat the baddest bitch shit. I already beat the drip. So I'm not even competition. I'm not even competition with Lucien. We competition with the French bake that own 85% of Africa. How about that? While we fighting amongst each other. We in competition with Spotify. Get niggas 500 million. Said work it out amongst yourselves. Y'all ain't got shit on me. Y'all ran my name through the mud. Y'all took all that position. You gave the other niggas my position coach. Ain't nobody king over me. Any summer, every summer, there's no king. I'm the king because I'm the only one against y'all. I'm the only one that's gonna go against y'all. That's why. That's why. Easy over.
Outside of the aggressive TMI verses,
Now if I fuck this model and she just bleach her asshole and I get bleach on my t-shirt, I'ma feel like an asshole.
that contain cries for attention, Ye has only been obsessed with big business. So much so that he understands that the optics of being an open neo-Nazi garners enough attention for him to release an unfinished album, which in turn advertises whatever inflammatory t-shirt or ugly overpriced shoe he's selling. Understanding how his words could be harmful to the black community is irrelevant. Is it cringe and gross how he treats his current wife? Absolutely. He legit wants the power of white men, so much so that he's making songs about Adolf Hitler now. I kind of think Ye is the logical conclusion for the bizarro far-right media landscape, in which his art gets progressively worse as the artists themselves aspires to be like the big businessmen who exploit them. So what is to be done? We are responsible for building environments where this violence doesn't permeate or overtake our communities, and that means making the men in our lives accountable. Check in with your younger dudes, ask them what they're watching, talk to them, play Fortnite with them if that's what they're doing. I don't really know what young people are doing right now. Are they playing Mario Kart? The new Mario Kart looks cute. Expedition 33, I don't really know what that is. I need to check that out. We can offer healthy alternatives simply by checking in and hearing what they think and having conversations with them, I hope. The collection of loser dudes online make it imperative that we engage with them regarding what they're absorbing regularly to correct misinformation. And also, a lot of these streamer dudes are pretty sad and have low self-esteem. So the more spaces we can facilitate locally, programs, live events, other things, to get people outside, the quicker we can help build a healthier social environment than a Twitch chat. But that's all I got for now, I think. What do you think? This went in a lot of different places and I hope it made sense. I will get to the Donald Glover video eventually, but there's a couple other things I want to talk about. I think maybe the Timberland AI thing is interesting. I want to research that some more. And if you watch this all the way through, make sure to leave a flexing arm emoji. If you like the video, make sure you like the video. Leave a comment or some words of encouragement below. Share with a friend or someone you think needs to hear this. But if you really vibe with my work, consider joining my Patreon where I post stuff like this early, usually without all the weird edits I have to make for YouTube. So I have the second phase of tour coming up. I'll put the dates over here. So if you're in the EU, come through. There's some chill, but also some bigger festival dates. So it should be a good time. And I think that is all I got. Peace.